If you have been surprised that the real estate market in Ocean City just keeps heating up, you are not alone. In today's video, I want to talk you through everything that happened throughout the month of April, bring some context to those statistics based on the past, as well as get into what I expect to happen going forward. For those of you that this is the first market update you are seeing, welcome to the channel. And for those of you who are returning, welcome back. You already know how we do this, but we start with where we were. We talk about where we are with some visualizations to help really drive the point home, and then we get to the future. So with that said, mortgage rates, as we always start with, really haven't changed a whole lot. There are some lenders that moved not an inch throughout the entire month of April and are still sitting at 6.125, but in general, they did inch up a bit. Now, inventory had a huge drop, which is completely uncharacteristic of what we see this time of year, down 12%, sitting at 240 properties. And if we circle all the way back to my projections for 2023, I thought by the end of the year we would cap out having hit a peak of 350. I am feeling much less confident about that as we continue to see inventory drop, which I simply didn't anticipate. Now, low days on market are stabilizing again. For condos, single family, it's kind of a different story, which we'll see here in a minute. And prices continue to jump. Now, condos are obviously up again, but if we look at single family, things look great at 24% increase year over year. But as you'll see in the coming charts, over the past 6 or 7 months, we've essentially been flat. So it's going to be fun talking about this. But pending sales, as we normally expect in the month of April, there's a dip from what we saw in March. March tends to be the busiest month down here, followed by April. Now, looking back over the past few years, you see a similar trend. But the gap really isn't as substantial as we've seen in the past. We had a very busy April. As far as closings go, we normally do see somewhere around flat from where we were in March, but this year we had a gigantic spike, and that has to do a lot with a lot of the new construction that had gone under contract earlier. Some people had honestly even gone under contract in the fall with an April closing date. So a little bit of an anomaly there. But I would expect going forward, based off the activity we saw pending in April, we should see another substantial amount of closings in May. Now, here's where we start to get interesting with single family homes. I have not been quiet about new construction, single families everywhere, right? 50% of our total single family homes were new construction at one point until things changed. Now, what we see here in the month of April is a pretty substantial drop in months of total inventory. That's a result not of demand, but of supply. What happened over the course of April? A lot of developers, it appears, took their listings off the market, whether those are not yet completed and they want to wait until they're closer to being completed, or whatever their rationale is. There was a substantial decrease in the number of single family homes available for sale, and a good portion of them I would expect to come back on the market in the future. But for now, here we have what looks to be a complete restriction or constriction in our supply. Now, again, here's what I wanted to really drive home. If you look back really through October, this bar 7 months back, it's essentially flat. Yes, there are some peaks and valleys, there are some ups and downs, but it's essentially flat. Where we go from here is anybody's guess, but typically when there's a plateau, it's a little more short-lived than this, as we can see really back in 2021. But I digress. The other component, again, of days on market, as those homes continue to sit and as some of the new constructions will sell, the days on market is heading back towards our traditional norms within the single family space. As you can see here, roughly around 60 days. We're almost there. Now, for condos, it's a different story. The demand is still extremely strong. The supply has been roughly flat for the last few months. So most of that variation that you've been seeing, if you're in the Facebook group that I post every week about what the inventory is, what the changes were, a lot of that has simply been spikes and declines in the single family inventory. Very strong price growth, again, as I mentioned earlier, with condos, and it seems to be pretty consistent there. I don't really expect that to change. And a driver of that, or something that if we saw this start to creep up, the days on market, I would start to have some pause, do some future casting about what that's going to mean. But demand is still extremely strong. We're still seeing some multi-offer situations. They are declining. Now, of course, here we are in May, and that's when demand historically declines anyway, because people want to be in by Memorial Day, be able to get the rentals booked, and that's simply unlikely to happen at this point. So we are at the end of the spring market. Properties still buy, they still sell, but the volume simply isn't going to be the same going forward. Now, as for, again, where we're going, and this is what everybody is always asking me about, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I do my best to read the tea leaves. Mortgage rates are expected over the coming 6 months or so to inch back down. Does that mean it will happen? I can't guarantee that. How much will they inch back down? I do not know, but we should have hopefully seen, and the market is betting that we just saw the last rate increase from the Federal Reserve. Whether that remains to be seen, we will find out in June at their next meeting. But if they come out and do not raise rates again, I think we are going to feel pretty good about the direction of things going forward as inflation starts to get more and more under control. Now, inventory-wise, again, it's ridiculous, the drop that we had from March to April. But again, you can read this in detail. Feel free to pause if you want to read all of the words. But in short, new construction homes coming off the market was a huge driver of that. And honestly, whether or not that was all of it, it wasn't. So there is some other factors at play, I should say. But in general, we're still down substantially from our peak in October of total inventory out there. And we're even down from where we started the year, which is atypical. It's abnormal to have inventory lower in the month of May. Here we are than we were in January. It's just unprecedented. So all of that leads me to believe that, again, prices are going to stay sticky. There's really nothing driving them down unless we see a wave of supply. And I feel like a broken record at this point, but I don't see it coming. Now, obviously, again, I can only look 1 foot ahead of me. And could there be something that blows up over the coming months? Absolutely can. Banks are still in turmoil. We're still seeing a lot of that. First Republic Bank was essentially just bought out by JP Morgan, if I'm not mistaken. And there's concern that others may follow suit, especially as the Fed continues to boost those rates. So that said, again, days on market, I don't expect to change too much, but single families, I do expect to continue to creep upwards. Condos are going to stay roughly flat. I don't expect them to drop, and they may inch up a hair. But in short, again, I think this was a little bit hotter of a market than I expected in the spring. Again, I'm as clear as I can be about my projections. I still believe that there may be some breathing room in the fall, but honestly, the further we get and the closer we get to that time frame, and I'm not really seeing any signs of anything giving. There are some properties that have gone under contract recently that I still can't believe went under for the price they're under. As long as that continues to happen, again, there is nothing that's going to incentivize most sellers, those who are even willing to sell at this point, to really budge and to put a price out there that's really attractive to people. There's just no need for it. So that's it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, call me, text me, reach out to me any of the ways you see here. I'm always around, always talking real estate, and happy to help. So hope to hear from you soon. I appreciate you hanging out with me as always on the channel, and I will see you next week.